So somehow I absolutely forgot to talk about the new quote-unquote free-to-play servant that came out with Lost Belt 6.3, and that is the little fairy chick Habetrot, I believe is how you pronounce her name. But she's actually really, really good. The only downside is that you have to get her through the friend point gacha. Like, they give you a free copy when you finish Lost Belt 6, but she's just like Saber Lily, where you have to pull her through the friend point gacha. And I had this realization that I have yet to pull one copy of Saber Lily, and thus the impending doom that I will probably never get this servant to NP5, at least not until I spend 4.5 billion friend points, just set in with me. So do keep that in mind. You will have this servant at NP1 for quite a while, unless you either get really lucky or you just have Gafoogle's amount of friend points available and you just want to go ahead and burn your time that way. I mean, she's definitely worth it, but I'm just trying to temper expectations and let you know that it's going to be quite annoying to get this servant. However, if you enjoy FGO content, I upload these videos every single day, and all I ask for in return is a like on the video and a subscribe to the channel. And if you're feeling extra feisty and you want to show further support for the channel, you can click that join button and become a channel member. But with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about this servant. Which, I guess we can talk about her hits, although I really don't think her hits matter all that much, because you're either going to be using her as this buff and die type servant because of her third skill, or you're just going to kind of use her as a standard arts looper, which I really do like that she has that role, by the way, because the only other AoE arts writers that we have are Summer Mordred, who, you know, you can't get pretty easily. Like, she's not just on every banner. Then there's the, like, god of arts looping Da Vinci Lily, who, again, is pretty limited. And then there's Odysseus, who's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, and you can get spooked by him on banners, but it is nice that there is, like, a free-to-play 4-star version that can also fill this role. So I do like that, and that's probably what a lot of people are going to be using her for. But the main thing to note is that she has a 0.57% NP gen stat, which is not like super maximum crazy. It's not like the 80% plus where a swift breeze comes in and they just loop their entire NP. But it could certainly be worse. It could have slapped her with like a 30% NP gen. So this is definitely more in the average range. But because she's a rider, she has that luxury, because she's predominantly going to be fighting casters, and if you didn't know, casters give you like the most refund in the entire game. If you didn't know, different classes will actually give you a different amount of NP when you fight them, so her being the one that fights casters, the one that give you like the most refund back, that's actually really good, so it can kind of make her deceptively loop a bit better than you would think she would be able to. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about her skills, which kind of go in two directions. You have the second skill, which is pretty much just there for farming, and then you have the first and third skill that are more of her support type skills. So it kind of just depends on how you want to build this servant and how you want to use her. But this first skill is a targetable 2k heal that gives them 1 turn of debuff immunity and gives them 1 turn of a 100% star gen buff on a 3-turn cooldown, which makes this skill really disgusting, especially when you consider that the uptime for the skill is that you get the effects for 1 skill and then they're down for 2 turns and then you get them back again. The healing and the debuff immunity are very powerful if you're fighting a boss, because having a full turn where the boss can't stun you, lower your attack, you know, slap defense down on you, none of that nonsense. That is going to be very invaluable, especially if you played Lost Belt 6, where like every single boss slaps 400 debuffs on you. If the quality of boss that we saw in this Lost Belt is going to translate into Lost Belt 7, it's probably going to be a good thing to have servants that can do this. But then the 100% buff to their crit star generation is absolutely insane. That's what Caskill does, albeit Caskill does it to the entire party for 3 turns. But it's still going to have that same insane effect where it basically guarantees that arts cards can now drop crit stars. If you didn't know, arts cards have an inherent star gen value of 0, just as buster cards have an inherent NP value of 0. You can make them both gen the things they're not supposed to gen. If you have like a very high hit buster card, then you like really buff the NP generation value of it. The same thing goes for arts cards. If you can give them a 100% crit star generation value, it guarantees that each hit will drop a star for said arts card. Unfortunately, you can't just target this on herself and have her arts cards go spam crazy. I mean, she does have 2 quick cards with 4 hits with 9% star gen, so those might actually be able to go dummy crazy, but you can't make her into like arts star gen person, right? Because her NP also only has 3 hits on it. But this is targetable, so slap this on anybody and you're going to really buff their star gen by a massive amount. And again, it's on a 3-turn cooldown. So we're already off to a very powerful start. Then let's talk about the farming skill, which is giving her a 30% arts buff for 3 turns, as well as an 80% battery that is on a 7-turn cooldown. It does take 2k of her HP away, but I mean, her first skill is a 2k heal, so if that really bothers you, just use that on herself. But yeah, this is going to buff up that arts card performance even more, buff up that NP gen, because Lord knows she needs it with a 3-hit NP. But then the 80% battery also just kind of makes all of that irrelevant, because she already loops pretty well with double Castoria, and then slapping in an 80% battery is just like, yeah, she's guaranteed the 3-turn farm everything. I don't know if they slapped that on there because it's hard to get her higher NP copies because she's a friend point servant. But regardless, it's going to be very much appreciated because it's going to give her very good synergy for event farming, where you can just slap basically any CE on her and just have her farm whatever you want. So I think she's actually going to be a very good free-to-play farming servant for a lot of people. However, then there's her third skill, which is going to allow her to buff one ally with invincibility for 1 turn, gives them a 5-turn guts, gives them 2k HP every turn for 5 turns, removes all of their debuffs, and then she just dies. So she gives them this like really powerful survivability skill, protecting them from any damage for that 1 turn with the invincibility, then protecting them for 5 turns with the guts, and then not only giving them a little bit of HP refund every turn so they have some sustainability, but she removes all of the status ailments, so like burn, poison, curse, anything like that. So it makes sure that like your healing's not going to be getting canceled out or anything by like said burns or poisons or whatever. It's on a 10-turn cooldown, but who really cares because she's going to die anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So this is like if you wanted to use her as more of a support, you can pop this down, make one of your female allies really, really powerful, and then she'll just peace out and allow for any of your other buffers to then come in. So it's very good if you want to like cycle out buffers because she'll kill herself for free. In fact, what you can have her do is you can have her pop her second skill, clear like any wave or just knock out a big chunk of like a boss enemy's HP, and then just have her die after she does this because she'll just drop a whole lot of buffs on somebody, pop the NP, and then after that turn she dies and she's out of there. So I really like how this servant is built because of that, because you can use her as just like a very good free-to-play arts farming rider, which she'll do very well at, or you can have her be this like 1 turn of pretty good NP damage, then have her die and cycle out another buffer, which being able to cycle out buffers is very, very good in a lot of these challenge quests. But I guess let's go ahead and conclude by talking about her NP, which I mean they just made really broken for free, because she's getting a 30% NP damage buff that activates first for 1 turn, so it means her NP is going to hit really hard as long as you have her second skill active as well, because that NP damage buff is going to multiply into that arts card buff to give her even more damage. But that's not it. She also pierces enemy defense, so she has very good utility for boss fights if you want to use her as your main rider. And then on her overcharge, she's dropping 20 to 40 stars, which you might think is for herself, but she actually lowers her own star gen absorption by 100% for 3 turns. So in all actuality, it's just more support from her, because then she's dropping stars for somebody else to play with. So then at that point, you can use her as a secondary DPS that then will drop stars for the primary DPS to use. So there are just so many different ways to use this servant. She is so diverse, and she's free. Like, let's just remember that. They gave us this free servant that you can use as like a 1 NP pump and dump, and she just gives a lot of buffs to one female ally. Or you could just have her stick around, you know, forego the entire third skill. Don't even worry about using it, in which case she'll still be a pretty effective healer because she can give you a heal every 3 turns. That is also going to give you debuff immunity and a massive amount of crit star generation. And then her NP itself is going to be doing massive amounts of damage, piercing defense, so even if the bosses have mad amounts of defense, she doesn't care. She's going to bypass all of that. But more importantly, she's just star bombing every time she pops her NP. And like I was mentioning, she loops very, very well. So the amount of times you're going to see this NP if you want to use her in that role is going to be quite frequent. So I am very excited to start testing out like different team comps that involve this servant, because she just seems disgustingly fun to use because of how diverse she is. And again, if you have some art setup, which is probably going to involve Castoria or Tamamo, who are like the primary support casters, that third skill will always be useful if she's about to die. If you feel like Habetrot is about to go out, like she's like at 5 HP or something, you can have her dump all of those buffs onto your main caster to just keep them alive for even longer, which that I think is like the secretly good thing, because maybe a criticism would be, oh, well, what if I want to use her with Odysseus or Vlad or like any other male servant that's going to be the primary DPS? Well, thankfully, the two support casters for arts are both females, so there will always be a use for that third skill. And it's all things that you would want to have on Castoria and Tamamo anyway. It gives them more survivability, a guts in case they get burst down, extra healing, removing their debuffs, at least the status ailment debuffs. So she's just a very good servant. And again, if you don't want to do like the super big brain strategies where you're just using all the different diversity, you can just use her as a simple AoE writer that loops everything, right? So like you can just turn the brain off and arts loop everything, which again, probably going to be your primary use for a lot of people. That's absolutely fine. But I'm just saying, if you want to pull out the strategy deck and start like working through things, she'll be very good and very effective if you want to use her that way. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What do you guys think of Habetrot? Do you think she's a very good reward for finishing Lost Belt 6? I mean, you basically have to go through an insanely difficult boss gauntlet, and then they actually give you a free 4-star servant and then slap her in the friend point gacha. So is that worth it for you guys? Let me know in the comments down below. And with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day.